Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I don't even know how to start this one off because honestly, this is some of the biggest news in gaming history. Microsoft has officially acquired, or is in the process of acquiring, Activision Blizzard for nearly rounded $70 billion. Huge impact on the future of gaming, on the metaverse, on just the existence of these IPs, like going into not only the near future, but over the next 10 years, right? Honestly, it gives me the impression, like, I feel now that we've gone through it's been a whole day now. People have had time to digest the news, as I'm sure all of you are. You've seen all these different points that different journalists have made and maybe come to your own opinion. We're going to go ahead and reflect on some of those items right now, give you my thoughts about what this means for the gaming industry and the metaverse at the very end of this short little show. But before we get started, do me a favor, hit that like bell, click subscribe, and join the strike team. I think this is going to have to become more of a discussion because I think there's a lot of good that we can do by having an understanding of what the video game industry actually looks like from a dollar standpoint. You know what they always say, follow the money if you really want to understand what's happening. I think it's important to see what this industry is, how this industry is built, and maybe that's something we can cover over the course of time. But right now what's happening is that the video game industry, the traditional video game industry, and now Web3 technology, blockchain technology, are now meeting in where people all around the world are placing their bets on what the future of this metaverse, what this vision for the metaverse will be. Now, if we're talking about this strictly from a gaming perspective, okay, from traditional gamers, a traditional gamer mindset, I guess you could say, what happened today was not only the largest tech deal in history, but a sea change in the future of how video games are going to be distributed out to consumers. This is a huge bet, obviously, on Game Pass. And the new video game ecosystem of the future, the if you will, the Netflixification of gaming, that is the easiest story to follow and to understand. All of us that are either PC gamers or Xbox consoles, Nintendo, Xbox, Sony, so on and so forth. All of us have different areas of the industry that directly affect us. And this is such an important moment in time that everyone's being affected. PC gamers, console gamers, the whole console wars, all of this is happening all at once. And it's so hard to really wrap your mind around all of it. But I think we just need to start with the most recent news that was happening right before this acquisition. So giving you the lead up into what today was. What's been in the news recently, obviously, is all the controversy around Activision Blizzard and their workplace culture, and rightfully so. There's a big discussion going on right now about the unification of video game developers and how the future of the labor aspect of this industry is going to proceed forward. Unfortunately, because what looks like happened here today is that discussion is going to be pushed forward over the course of a year and a half, where Microsoft is going to be given a little leeway. I think gamers are going to give Microsoft a little bit leeway. I think Microsoft has built enough trust where they say, like, look, we're wanting to put these ideals forward in terms of a diverse workplace, and they're going to hold leaders accountable. Now, in my opinion, I think they're going to be successful. Bobby Kotick's going to be gone after 18 months. I think that's pretty clear at this point. So there is going to be a chance for restructuring, not only on Activision Blizzard side, but restructuring on Microsoft side. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, has made such an important, other than just acquiring this IP, there's much more to the story that goes beyond that from a business sense. Number one, Microsoft Gaming as its own entity is going to be spun off with Phil Spencer as the head, the CEO, running the department. Of course, now Microsoft Corporation in general is going to own this, and we're going to find more out during their quarterly report as they release that information to the public. But in the meantime, Spencer's at the top of the totem pole right now, and over what he's been able to accomplish with Xbox over the past 5-10 years, really since the previous era, has been a success. and they have the financial resources behind him to back him up to make these acquisitions, wipe the slate clean for the next generation of gaming, whatever that will be, and be a leader in the industry. I personally think that deals of this size obviously do not get done without an extreme amount of due diligence, both on the legal and the accounting side of it within both of these corporations. So I think there's also obviously a discussion about, whether or not this is good for the industry, right? A monopolistic type of powers are being discussed. The DOJ, potentially investigating on whether or not this acquisition would make Microsoft into a monopoly. But I can already tell you, before we even make the arguments, that deals don't get done unless they pass the due diligence to get to this level. So there's a high likelihood that this is going to pass. But to go ahead and play out the situation here, and this is just off the top of my head, if you're going to want to make the argument that this acquisition makes Microsoft uncompetitive, or I'm sorry, it makes other companies unable to compete with Microsoft because of their dominance, then what I would say is, when we look at the entire industry as a whole, we have a lot of key players that provide just as much services, if not more, than Microsoft. So it's going to be hard to make an argument that Microsoft has all this power when entities like Tencent, entities like Nintendo, Sony, EA, also participate in this space and are making a competitive argument to attract customers to their ecosystem. That's one. And that's before we talk about like all of the other non gaming industry traditional mindset companies like Netflix and Google and Amazon and Facebook. All of these different companies have gaming divisions, or at least at one point had, or have spun off, or have acquired, that are also going to be thrown in that category, even though gamers don't really want to count some of those entities. That's fine. And then on top of that, we didn't even talk about the biggest companies of all, which was Apple with their App Store and gaming on their App Store, and Steam and Epic Store, both offering services that are going to compete against Microsoft's PC offering, right? So, I mean, just off the top of my head, I was able to make there 5 different reasons, 5 different, at minimum, different competitors that still can compete against Microsoft, which is very hard to then say they are a monopoly. Regardless, that doesn't mean that the argument about a type of monopoly is gone. There can still be a lot of fight back, especially from the Biden administration. My personal guess here is that based on where we're at in the election cycle, there's not going to want to be any more drama that's going to interfere right before the next election for the midterms. So I think in terms of launching this information from that standpoint, I don't think they could have picked a better time, honestly, because lawmakers are going to want to hold off right now until the next election, at which point could then affect this. But we'll have to see. So obviously that is another huge item that got brought up today that we covered. What does this mean for the console wars, right? What does this mean for Xbox versus PlayStation versus Nintendo? And it's a really hard one to think of, because now the pressure right now is on Sony to respond. Now, I don't think Sony's going to be going out and making all these types of acquisitions like people may be posting on Twitter, like, oh, they need to go buy this company or do that or do this or do that. I think that Sony now needs to adopt their product offering to this new type of gaming industry that Microsoft seems to be setting. They're setting the trend here, and the public and the stock market, the public and investors and gamers are seeming to be okay with this moving forward. So I don't see a reason why Microsoft won't take the lead here in terms of what the vision of the video game industry can be. But Sony's going to have to make a decision. Are they going to offer, some type of service, or what are they going to do next to be able to either compete with Microsoft on market share, or, this is the part where they may decide to take some more risks that other companies may not. It may force them to go try to bring back titles that at one point people had thought were dead. Or maybe it also influences them to take a risk on a crypto game on its platform on a very small brand title. It's it's up in the air. Nobody really knows. It is up in the air. But on that note, I do think it's important here to also talk about how the implications of the metaverse and what that can mean for blockchain gaming and Web3 technology with this deal. And it goes back to a little bit of my personal thoughts on what I think is going on right now in the crypto markets, and this idea of what the metaverse can be. The clearest idea right now that people have put forward on what the metaverse is this idea of Snow Crash and Ready Player One. This idea of a world owned by corporations, that the common humanity interacts within. And obviously all the dystopian issues that can arise from that. Obviously, those are books of fiction, and we're living out potentially this idea proceeding forward. Now, obviously, what happens in the books isn't going to happen in real life. That's just not the way the world works. But it can help us understand what the vision of the future can be. Okay, so if that is the idea here, if that is the most fleshed out idea of what the metaverse can be, then I can easily see a world where Microsoft creates not only a metaverse family of IP that are all under one umbrella, but literally a large MMO style virtual world, where all of these things exist. Okay. Now this can play out 100 different ways. Like, this was just me throwing out speculation, right? But we could see scenarios where Microsoft now allows items that are earned in one game that they own to be transferred into another game. So the idea, like we were talking about just a couple of weeks ago with NFTs, about how digital skins can now, your skin from one game can now transfer to another. This isn't what they've announced, but you can start to see how some of these announcements are starting to lead into that becoming a possibility. People in recent news have been making the argument that you don't need blockchain technology to do this, and that's true. You don't. And we may see Microsoft making its attempt at doing that, and then being able to compare the idea of a metaverse closed within a closed economy, or an open, decentralized metaverse that has been being built out through Web3 technology over the past few years. Honestly, what it sounds like to me is it sounds like an arms race, a race to the future to build the idea of the metaverse. Everyone across the world, NVIDIA, Meta, aka Facebook, Microsoft and Xbox, Disney, Walmart, all of these companies all at the same time have been putting forth their idea of what the metaverse can be, and are met with a lot of criticism, and rightfully so, because these are all first draft initial ideas that companies are willing to take a risk with financially. We're in a world now, and crypto enthusiasts are quite aware, we're in a world right now of failing and fluctuating currencies all around the world, which is having all of us literally have a discussion on the definition of what value is. And I can make a strong argument that being a individual that's being represented inside a digital world of your choosing, alongside all of your friends with all of your, likes and interests, presents a value proposition. And we know this already because we've seen Fortnite. I mean, if you want to go back in time, we've seen Blizzard and World of Warcraft create these digital online economies, where everyone was living for X amount of time. And then that transition into RuneScape, and then that transition into EVE Online, and all the other countless MMOs that I've missed out on. We've seen how this has started to grow over time, and the next step may be where companies, corporations, video game developers are now saying, look, let's go ahead. The next step could be the idea of purposely creating these economies, interacting both developers and players getting both of them to both of their feedbacks to create this virtual world that people are gonna live in. We've seen Fortnite throw concerts where X million people were concurrently logged in. We now know that people not only spend a significant amount of time in a new digital space, but they're willing to transact within it because they're receiving value. Now, that definition and the amount is up to everybody's individual perspectives, and I can't tell you what's valuable or not. I can just tell you what I've seen and what the dollars have pointed out as we follow the money over the course of the past few years, right? And we've gone off on a lot of tangents here, mostly because today was such a crazy day and we're throwing a lot of information at you all at once. But I think it's really important that over the course of this next year and a half, there is going to be a period of the corporate world presenting these products and services and vision of the metaverse in the future, and it's going to continue to happen. And it's going to be met with backlash and backlash and backlash, and 90% of those ideas are going to fail the same way like 90% of internet companies failed in the early during the .com boom. So this is all playing out all over again, with the evolution of the internet going from Web 2 to Web 3. And I understand, it's hitting a lot of people at the same time. We're having these worlds collide. For me, obviously, I've been a gamer since, playing professionally in Halo 2, back in 2006. Obviously I'm also a certified public accountant who, specializes in taxation and cryptocurrency, so my worlds are colliding and I'm seeing how these things are starting to interact, and I'm starting to understand that right now we already have confirmation that these things are being built out. We have confirmation that they're going to attempt to come to market over the next 2 to 3 years. A couple days ago when we were talking about the Troy Baker NFT scandal, we were all having this conversation about the future of gaming again, and now we're all blasted into the future rather than having a hypothetical idea. Now we're all forced at the same time to have a conversation about what the future is. And to be fair, in my opinion right now, crypto gaming isn't going to be the immediate jump. I think what's more likely to happen is that these corporations are going to build out crypto-like services without the blockchain. They're going to try to do it on their own internal servers. The idea of the intranet versus the internet. I'm thinking that some of these companies are also going to be building with the foresight of being able to connect in one way or another to the decentralized blockchain, Web3, internet. That's going to be where they're offered the most value over the course of time, but we're going to have to see how it plays out. I think that this is the beginning of more news that's going to be coming out. Don't be surprised if we see more acquisitions over the course of the next, 2 months, 3 months. With a less likelihood of possibility, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some of these crypto companies buy developers. For the purpose of launching their version of the metaverse, their version of GameFi, of the play and earn model. We're all experimenting right now because it literally is a race between all companies, and everyone sees the potential value if they can tap into it. Now it's just going to be which communities are going to be able to get there first, and help usher in the rest. There's going to be so much news on gaming over the year of 2022 is going to be the year on gaming and blockchain technology, in my opinion. We're going to have to just see how it goes. Guys, because it's going to be such a good year, I do think it's really important that we continue these conversations. Like I said, I was playing around with the idea of wanting to go over the video game industry by the numbers with you all to be able to see and have an understanding of like why certain actions by some companies carry more weight and impact than others. I think that's something important to cover, but also it's really important to get gamers' perspectives right now because there's really three important parties right now: the owners of the IP, and in this case, we're talking about Xbox, Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, the owners of this IP, but that also applies to the owners of the IP in Web3 technology, right? That also means that, hey, if you're the owner of a piece of an NFT that represents a piece of software that represents XYZ, whatever it can be, you are now in one of those tent poles. The other two is the developers right now, which it's going to be hard to see how that plays out. Unionization does seem like it's being pushed off. It does seem like this is going to make it a lot harder to accomplish. Maybe that forces developers, and I mean, I don't say this in a good way or a bad way. You never want to have developers be forced to do one thing or another. You want them to be able to build the thing that they dream, but also coming with the understanding that in order to, you can really only have three. You either can, two out of three. You can choose time, you can choose money, or you can choose quality. You can't have all three, or else you'd have the perfect product in the world, right? And for devs, you can't take out the pillar of money. Like, operating and staying alive in this industry is difficult because of how long it takes these games to be developed and launched. It is a hurdle that needs to overcome. I think that to address that hurdle, Web3 technology is going to make it easier for developers to create their ideas and bring it forward. And to point to a reference for that, I would really highly recommend that you all go look at the NVIDIA presentation of the Omniverse, not because that's what I think the future is going to be, but because they're giving a direct, tangible solution on how this metaverse can exist. Not only from within Microsoft, but within Microsoft attaching to something with Sony, attaching to something with Nintendo, attaching to the decentralized Web3 internet. That anybody can connect to. They're putting forward their vision on how to make that a possibility with their services related to the Omniverse. So I think if you are a gamer, if you are a crypto enthusiast, if you're just interested in following this industry, that NVIDIA press conference is a must. You need to understand how this is being pitched to the world, whether or not if you already see the vision. So that's important. My voice is already going. So we'll keep it short here. For the rest, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, I think this is really interesting. I'd love to get all of y'all's feedback. Do me a favor. Leave a comment in the messages. Send me a DM if you're interested in maybe doing a podcast. I know a lot of you out there, we haven't had a chance to talk in a while because, one, I've been planning for the wedding and now tax season started. So I haven't streamed in a while, and I'd like to catch up with all of you that have any strong opinions and would be willing to voice them. Hit me up. Look, I'm still planning for the wedding. I'm still going through tax season. So we'll try to make something work, I hope. But just hit me up regardless. Let's talk. We'll figure it out. In the meantime, this is going to be Striker from Strike Team Games signing off. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Enjoyed this little episode. Try to throw together all the ideas. We didn't really have a set, lineup to follow. Kind of threw in a lot of different ideas there all at once. I hope some of them resonated with you. We will be getting more information coming out in the near future. There will be more specific details released. I would expect the next things that we're going to hear from are the internal shiftings in these companies. I wouldn't be over the next couple of days. Microsoft is going to be having meetings with all of these different teams, planning out the futures for each individual part of the project. And some of those teams are going to be talking to the press. So we're going to be getting more news. But overall, I think for gaming, this is a win-win. Whether or not you believe in crypto or Web3 based gaming, or whether or not you enjoy, no pay, no play, whatever, however you want to look at it, depending on what side you're on, regardless, what's about to happen, it looks like, is that money from all over the world is going to be invested in the companies that are trying to target the future of gaming. That includes traditional video games and the new iterations of the metaverse across the board. This applies not only to Microsoft and gaming. This applies to Disney and whatever they're going to do with all of their IP. Another really important thing to pay attention to. One last thing, take note of Nintendo. Okay, we've had a lot of discussion right now about why this acquisition cost $70 billion and whether or not that's important or not. A lot of people already are starting to make the comparison of being like, well, Nintendo's worth the same thing. Would you rather have had this for the same price? And the one thing I can tell you is that no one's going to be able to convince me off the top of their head, that Nintendo does not have the most valuable IP in the video game industry because of history, because of nostalgia. Maybe they're not the number one selling games right now, but I don't think Mario, Zelda, Samus, I don't think any of them are going anywhere anytime soon. I'll put it that way. So keep an eye on Nintendo and news that we hear in the near future. But for right now, this is Striker signing off. Catch y'all next time. Hit y'all up. Peace.